Welcome back to Plague Scythe Studios, everyone. Ryan here, taking a look at my first virtual instrument library in a long time with Impact Soundwork's Shreddage 3 Precision. Like I said, it's been quite some time since I last reviewed a virtual instrument like this or a Kontakt library, because I find compared to the products that I usually review on this channel, it really comes down to personal preference. I can kind of objectify an amplifier or a pedal circuit in some ways, or at least qualify them in ways that I think are significant and kind of show ways I prefer to use them or where they don't excel compared to some of their competitors. But when it comes to stuff like drum libraries or even orchestral libraries, is one better than the other? I think it really comes down to what you're looking for creatively. And so that's why I've kind of stayed in my lane for the past year or so when it comes to these sort of plugins and libraries. And quite frankly, I don't think the world needs another dozen Get Good drum videos. I think that's, everything's been said that needs to be said. So when Andrew from Impact Soundworks reached out to me about Shreddage 3 Precision, I was initially kind of skeptical and was like, okay, goody, here we go. It's another virtual instrument library. But I decided to give this one a shot because, number one, though I don't consider myself a bass player, I do play bass. And so I think I have a bit more of a discerning ear when it comes to string instruments versus, saying, well, this drum set sounds like the real thing, or, this is something I would use instead of the real thing. Number two, I'm actually in the middle of songwriting and some compositional work where having a realistic sounding bass guitar library would be very beneficial, because tracking to stock synth samples is not exactly inspiring. It gets the job done in terms of what I'm trying to do, but having something that sounds closer to the finished product would definitely be helpful. And for a lot of people nowadays, programmed bass guitar is the finished product, and we'll certainly be talking about that aspect as well. And then number three, there is supposed to be an upcoming product from Impact that I'm very much looking forward to. I don't think that that's public yet, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I kind of want to build out a framework and testing methodology in this review for what I hope to be a future review video, whether I get a license or not. I'll probably end up buying that one to try it out. So that is all to say. Number one, big thanks to Andrew from Impact Soundworks for sending me over this code. Greatly appreciate it. As always, I accept no other financial compensation for reviews. It's sad that I have to say that, but welcome to ShillTube. And secondly, this is kind of a glimpse in a similar manner to a previous fuzz-centric video I made as to why I don't review these things at all, because I find them hard to really nail down what I prefer. So how can I tell you what you should prefer? But anyway, let's get into it. Shreddage 3 Precision. It's named after the instrument that it is based on. Of course, being a Fender P bass, we're all very much familiar with that. It's perhaps the most common bass guitar design ever, at least at its core, between that and the jazz bass. The good thing about the P bass is it just works for every genre. It would not be my first pick for many genres, but this library alone kind of proves you pair it with the right gear, you compensate for some of its quirkiness, and you can make it work from everything from jazz to melodic death metal and everything in between. As a guitarist who prefers to track my own bass, again, I wouldn't consider myself a bassist by any means, I do tend to prefer neck through, sometimes humbucker equipped bass tones. But if you're someone who's going after the P bass sound, or you're simply working with all sorts of musical genres, this is probably the definitive library to get that I've personally used, because it captures that character damn near flawlessly, even down to the 5-string territory. So, us metal or jazz players can absolutely get use out of this. There's all sorts of attack character built in. So you've got, actual pick tones, finger picked, slap, you got staccatos, mutes, trills, slides, some buzz effects depending on whether you hit it hard in terms of note velocity, or you can program it in different ways, which I guess brings me to the thing that always kind of scares me about virtual string instruments, because I do have an ear for that, because I do get a little meticulous about, oh, I want this pick attack to sound this way. So you can kind of get lost in terms of, programming all these MIDI changes and things that kind of take away from, just writing music. And that's one aspect of this library and the user interface in general that I really enjoyed. It is easy to just sit down, compose your music, play your bass parts without feeling overwhelmed or underwhelmed. I feel that a lot of these libraries take it to one extreme or the other, whereas this kind of takes a page out of the Fractal Audio playbook, where if you don't know what it does, leave it alone and you're going to get a good sound. But if you do want to kind of personalize what your end product is, then don't be afraid to make a couple tweaks. And it's intuitive enough, organized well enough that I never really felt the need to look at a manual or anything, and I feel quite comfortable with it. With a simple press of a latching key to determine the picking mode used and leaving all other parameters at their default settings, I find Shreddage 3 Precision passes that authenticity sniff test. I don't hear this and immediately think, oh, this is a robot playing this instrument. This isn't a person, because there is enough human detail in there. You can hear the stuff like the trills and slides and hammer-ons and things that more rudimentary libraries don't capture. So I got to give kudos to their algorithm and the recording process in general. Now, I definitely find that some of those imperfections get covered up better with genres that would call for more distorted bass tones. If you're playing hard rock or more processed contemporary metal, like we cover a lot on this channel, then I would assert there's almost no way you could tell the difference between this and a real bass guitar in the mix, unless it's, going for a crazy solo or something. It's only in those genres where the bass is played more articulately or gets more of the spotlight where I think you have a chance of picking out some of the imperfections, or maybe in this case, the perfections that give this away is, it's not really a person playing these things. But again, that's just with, default settings, just hitting keys, 30 seconds after you've loaded up into this plugin. If you want to be really meticulous and add in some of those imperfections and the trills and bends and vibratos, I have no idea how you'd be able to tell the difference on that alone. And that's coming from someone who can barely handle like 3 white keys at the same time. So if you're a particularly good keyboard player, you should have no problem making this thing sound convincing. Let's go over some of the things that set this aside from the competition, both in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Being a virtualized P-bass, it comes with the same drawbacks as a P-bass. There's no blending pickups. You got a single volume and tone control. So if you want to, expand upon that, you're going to do some things later on in the signal chain. Again, not a fault of the library. It's just, that's the way the instrument is. You have a multi-tracking mode, which is especially handy if you want to get a big stereo image, not generally what you want to do for, rhythm bass guitar. I think this would be more handy on their guitar libraries, but you can definitely get some great sounds out of it if you're going for a larger stereo image. You have things like fretting modes, picking modes, which can absolutely affect the end tone, especially on faster passages, the overall pick attack and stuff like that. So if you're getting something that maybe doesn't sound natural to you, then, change that up to polyphonic or, sweep some of the modes there, and perhaps you'll get a more realistic sound. For me, I think natural tends to nail it as being natural. Some other things, you can transpose whatever incoming MIDI information to match the pitch that you want. You've got an anti-repetition control that will increase or decrease the chance that you play the same samples over and over. Cranking that up definitely helps, eliminate some of the roboticness if you're running into that issue. You're given access to speed and intensity parameters when it comes to hammer-ons, slides, vibratos. You can adjust the velocity curve for both strummed and non-strummed modes, which again is one of those things that I didn't feel the need to even look at, which is good. It means it's well calibrated out of the box. And under the advanced side of things, you can do some crazy stuff like increase the time and variation of the popping noises that get added to notes after certain velocities, or even add in some DI line noise if you're not getting enough 60 cycle hum in your sound. So a lot of neat things in there that, again, for the really meticulous among us, I think you're given kind of all the toys to play with. I won't go into the articulation setup in general here because this is one of those things that's really going to come down to personal preference. I find that it was calibrated pretty well in terms of where velocities overlapped, where it should switch between this playing style and that. But if you're looking for a very particular style based on how you play or program your notes, then look here and you'll be able to make adjustments from there. The console is one thing that I did not expect to enjoy as much as I actually have, because when it comes to built-in amp modeling and effects, generally I just like throw them to the side, because compared to a quality plugin, or especially if you have a mountain of amp modelers and analog pedals, really it's no comparison a lot of the times. The effects included here, though, are actually pretty decent. They appear to be borrowing from some other libraries that Native Instruments offers, but if I wasn't such a bass and guitar tone snob, I probably would have no reservations about using this. But being that I am, there's part of me that would rather use other plugins, especially like, Neural DSP Dark Glass. This sounds amazing through that, and all that much more authentic because of it. But, if you want to get a decent distortion sound, you got access to a Proco Rat model, a DS1, a Tube Screamer with additional like bass, middle, treble controls. The guitar amp models that are included can absolutely work. I'm not a huge fan of the cabinet IRs that are included here. I feel some of them are a little boxy, especially for bass guitar. There's no 4x10 models that I know of off the top of my head. There is a convolution plugin though, if you wanted to use your own, though I generally just use that with a different plugin entirely. And the chorus, the reverb, delay effects, not my absolute favorite, but again, because I'm a bass player and not a bassist, those things don't bother me as much as they would for a guitar. So I definitely think they add to the value of this plugin, and I would definitely be missing them if they didn't include them for the price that they're charging with this. So you can absolutely get an all-in-one comprehensive bass tone that you can tweak, and especially helps with having stuff like pre-EQ. Even in the DI stage, but especially if you're going for like a distorted tone, you can kind of fake having a preamp. So this console area makes this so much more powerful than just having a virtual P bass might sound at first. To wrap this up for the Precision Library, I would call it mission accomplished. I mean, this does about everything that I would personally want out of a comprehensive P-bass library. You know, there's a couple things that I could add to my wish list in terms of, you know, being able to individually tune strings. You know, it'd be nice if I could say drop A and extend the register a little lower here or there, or just get a little bit of a different tone. But for what is there, what I can evaluate, I'm not really left wanting much. I mean, the core performance, both in terms of the bass player's performance that was captured and the performance of Kontakt when using this, the realism factor as a whole, very satisfied. And again, if I didn't play bass in any capacity, I would absolutely use this on you know, an actual album. And a lot of people are doing that with bass libraries now and, you know, in the past to great results. Would I still recommend, you know, an external plugin suite or outboard gear to get the best sound that you can out of this? Absolutely. Unless you're going for like DI straight to the desk tones, I think a lot of the, you know, included plugins, you know, aren't up to my quality. Now, does that mean this is going to be your weakest link in your mix? There's a good potential it's not going to be. And if that is the case and this does what you wanted to do, then you're done. And I absolutely think that the asking price of $130 for a virtual instrument plus all these effects that, as you heard in the stock sound demos in this video, I mean, you can absolutely get really good results. So yeah, if you're looking for a P-bass library, this is a really good option to consider, probably the only option to consider if you're looking for particular features out of this. Yes, it's a bit taxing. Obviously, you're not going to be able to run this on your 2012 Asus notebook like I have that kind of starts to cry at just a bass Reaper project. But for less than the cost of a Squier P-bass starter kit, and without having to spend 10,000 hours to master the instrument, you can have expert performances and about all the virtual effects that you would realistically ever need to achieve the sounds that I think most people are going after. So, you know, I'm not going to give some big melodramatic recommendation of fire your bass player, this is the library to end all libraries, you know, like a lot of people tend to do, but this is a really good one. You know, I absolutely want to keep this around, and I will be using this and foreseeably more Impact Soundwork's library for some of the work I'm doing, especially interested in some of their ethnic and orchestral libraries, especially if it's this same quality, this same intuitiveness in terms of the user experience. So I'm very pleased, and hopefully we'll have more Impact Soundwork stuff on here, whether or not continue to work with them in any professional capacity, because I'm left pretty impressed. So any other questions, comments, please leave them down below. Try to get back to you as always, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.